Hey everybody, welcome to the December 2023 final installment of this year's Winona live Q&A with my two favorite people, Dr. Green and Dr. Cat. We are here to answer your questions. Thank you for being patient with us while we get started. I just dropped in the chat a note to remind everybody, please start sending us your questions. I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves. I'm Angela, by the way. I think I said that, but if I didn't, I'm Angela. And I'm going to let Dr. Cat or Dr. Green take it away. I don't know who wants to go first.
We'll do ladies first. And I'll have to say that, if you see our Winona commercials, you see Angela on a lot of those. So she should be a familiar face to you all. I'm Dr. Cat Brown. I'm a Winona doctor taking care of patients in the state of Pennsylvania, Florida, and now also Hawaii as well. I have been an OB/GYN board certified for about 20 years. Love taking care of women, have dedicated my career to it, and now have a particular focus in caring for women in this menopause space and in this transition because I'm going through it myself. So I have a keen interest in it as well. So I hope you all had a great holiday. Thank you for taking the time to dial into our webinar tonight. Hopefully we can get some questions answered for you. Just don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to put your questions in the chat for us so that we have some good stuff to talk about. Otherwise, Dr. Green and I will just off the cuff, just jabber back and forth. So I'll let him introduce himself as well.
Hi, my name's Mike Green. I am also a board certified OB/GYN. I'm the Chief Medical Officer of Winona and also a prescribing physician for a lot of you in too many states to rattle off. So I've been doing this. So I finished residency in 99. So pretty much most of my adult life, a long time. Please start typing your questions in, or this is going to be maybe amusing, but not so educational. I also, dedicated my career to women's health and particular interest in helping women through the menopause transition. It's really an important stage of life that unfortunately doesn't get enough attention, and the attention it gets is wrong. So there's a lot of misinformation out there. Unfortunately, even a lot of doctors have not been well educated or educated at all on taking care of this problem, which is really unfortunate. There's a lot of women out there that need help, and their doctors don't know how to help them or aren't willing to. And so we're very happy to be able to come in and fill that gap and get people the treatment that they need to feel better and, reach their full potential and keep life good and long and healthy. So that's kind of what we're about. Looks like there's some questions populating.
Yep.
Let's hit it.
Yeah. All right.
And everybody, do you hear the guinea pig in the background? Are you hearing the squeaking, or is my camera filtering that out?
I don't hear it so far, but
okay,
we'll keep it here.
I forgot to put I'm going to put my notifications on pause. So I'm looking the place here. Just realized I didn't do that. We're going to be hearing a lot of buzzes and dings.
A lot of dings. Yes, everybody, feel free to let us know too if you can't hear us or whatever. Please, update us if we have any weird Wi-Fi issues or sound problems. Sometimes we can all hear each other, but on your side, maybe we have issues. So let us know. I'm just happy to see all the questions. It's good. Thanks everyone for getting us started. Let's see. We have a question from Charlene. She says, thanks for holding this session. She's 54, still getting periods irregularly, and wondering if it's too early to start on this program.
No.
Dr.
It is not too early. In fact, at 54, probably you're well in your way, even though you're still having periods. You're beyond the average age of menopause in the U.S., and so it's absolutely not too early to start. If you're starting to have symptoms, that's the time that you should start on therapy. So, if you have symptoms that are bothersome, then it's time to start.
Okay. All right. Next question. Rebecca, if you're still typing a question, retype it because it cut off. It said, how long would, and we don't know the rest. So I think we're not
long
going
time.
to we'll all attempt to guess what the rest of that says. But in the meantime, finish up your sentence and put it in the chat, and we'll go to Joelle. Joelle says, when it comes to bioidentical hormones, what would encourage someone to use a transdermal cream versus patch versus other application method?
Well, really, the bottom line comes down to what you feel is going to fit into your lifestyle the best. You know, what form of medication do you feel you can work into your daily routine that you think you can do well with? I would say that if you've ever reacted to adhesives or Band-Aids or had sensitive skin where you break out to things, maybe the patch might not be the best option if you've broken out with in response to adhesives in the past. But other than that, it's really patient preference, whether or not you prefer cream versus pills. I will say that doing the transdermal methods, meaning through the skin, meaning the cream and the patch, tend to have less GI side effects than taking a pill, just because you're avoiding that first pass effect and avoiding having to put it through your stomach to break down through the liver for processing. It gets right into your bloodstream via the skin. And so some patients like that aspect of that. But really, it's patient preference.
There also is a pretty significant cost difference. So that kind of fits into the patient preference. And I've had some patients say, gee, the patch must be so much better because it's so much more money, but it's not really the way life works, is what I've discovered anyway. And they both work great. And for some people, they love their patch and they're willing to spend extra money on it. But really, from a medical point of view, the cream work just as well. And they're a lot more reasonable as far as a lot more affordable as far as price goes. So don't be kind of get that wrong impression that the more money you spend, the better it's going to be. That's not always the case. In fact, I found that's often not the case.
Hey, Dr. Green, I have a question piggybacking on that topic. Why is the patch more expensive? Is it just how it's made?
So it really has to do with our costs. So we have to buy the patch from wholesalers, and the patches are expensive, even the generic ones. The creams, we actually compound ourselves in our pharmacy by our compound pharmacists. So that allows us to keep costs way down. We really kind of bypass big pharma that way. And we don't have the big markups that the big pharma is doing, even through the wholesalers. So it really has to do with our costs, and we try to pass that on to you. So here comes a little pitch. Come back in a month. We're going to have Joshua Gerke, who's our chief compounding pharmacist. This guy is amazing. I've learned so much from him, and we're going to be talking about compounding pharmacy, well, particularly compounding creams for HRT, and we'll go over all the ins and outs of that. But that's that's one of the things, because we do it ourselves in our own pharmacy. From sort of basic ingredients, we're able to keep the cost way down, and so it's kind of a nice thing for everybody. The other thing is, because we do it ourselves, we're able to keep the quality way high too. So that's something we know where we're doing it because we're doing it, and we know we're doing it right. So, and that's important when it comes to compounding. But you can learn all about that next month.
Yep, it's going to be exciting. I'm excited to sit in and listen to your conversation. I think it's going to be really informative. Okay, Michelle wants to know. She says she just started 2 weeks ago. I'm assuming that's using Winona at age 48, and she's feeling some benefits. But when do you typically feel optimal results?
I'd say most of my patients tend to notice the best results into the month 2 or 3 of treatment, I would say. Some of the symptoms get some relief early on, and patients are pretty happy with those. But I would say that most women, by the time we do their follow-up, that first follow-up, we do at about the 10-week mark. Most patients are pretty happy by that point. And then it's kind of only smooth sailing after that for a lot of my patients. So
the other thing I see, which I haven't really figured out yet, I don't know, Dr. Kat, if you figured this one out, but sometimes people get this sort of immediate relief, and they feel great, and then all of a sudden it sort of goes away for a while, and then it kind of comes back at that sort of month 2 mark. And I'm not sure, I haven't really figured out why that is, but it seems to be, I wouldn't say the majority, kind of a a small minority of patients, but enough of them that we hear about it. So don't be surprised if all of a sudden, like, you were feeling great, and then all of a sudden, hey, it seems to not be working, because then it tends to come back. You get these ups and downs.
I wonder if that has to do with just the way the body is acclimating to the changing hormonal environment. But yeah, I have had patients say that too, that like, and I don't know if it's just, getting their hands on treatment finally and finally getting some relief. It's like this huge weight lifted off your shoulders. And then once you kind of get into your routine, it seems like all of a sudden they'll see a rebound of symptoms. And I have a lot of patients asking to change their dosage around that time period. I'm like, wait, let's hold out a little longer because most of the time they get the benefits come back.
Okay, let's see. Taryn says she's 43. She has many perimenopausal symptoms, some intermittently, and she's been prescribed meds through Winona and has yet to take them. She's nervous. What if she takes them too early in the transition?
Well, so taking the medications is not going to do anything to like speed up your menopause transition. It's not going to alter that natural course that your body is going to take. So, there's no harm in starting them early if you're having symptoms that are bothersome. So, you're not going to, ruin anything by doing that, I guess. So I guess the real root that we have to get to is what makes you nervous. And, I would reach out to your doctor through Winona and just talk about what things are making you nervous so that we can talk through it and help you feel more comfortable. Because the medications really can't help you unless you start taking them. So that's something that if they're sitting on the shelf in your bathroom, they're not going to do any good for you unless you're actually taking them.
A true story. I can speak from experience. I had that too when I started Winona, just for people in the chat. And I wasn't even taking it. I just didn't want to take anything. I was so resistant to taking anything. And it was like, well, here's what we have for you. And I was like, But yeah, you're just kind of ultimately in your own way if you don't take it, right? So just saying. Rebecca says, how long do women stay on HRT and how long is safe?
So the average woman is on HRT anywhere from 3 to 5 years, sometimes a little longer, sometimes a little less. Every woman's unique. And really, how long is it safe? It's based on each woman's medical history and her symptom profile. But generally, as long as you're doing well, you don't have any other significant medical problems that make taking HRT complicated, a lot of women can stay on HRT as long as they need to safely treat their symptoms. I didn't mean to jump in. It looked like you were going to start to say something, Dr. Green.
No, that's okay. I was basically going to say the same thing.
Okay.
And that's something I think that has changed. Well, it's kind of pendulum back and forth. But, there was a time not too long ago where people were sort of afraid of this and they thought, we got to get people off of it. And people were pulled off HRT and they were just miserable. And it was like, well, you had it for long enough. Now you just got to be miserable, which really, there's no science to back that up. And there's just no reason to suffer. So it's safe to really be on it as long as you want. And there's really, there's no data that I know of, good data anyway, that's saying that being on it a long period of time is dangerous. In fact, the data is the opposite, because it does have health benefits. It decreases your cardiovascular risk, decreases your risk of osteoporosis, decreases your risk of colon cancer and other cancers. So there's some benefit just being on it, above and beyond what it's doing to making you feel better. So it's really safe to be on it as long as it's giving you benefit.
Everybody, also, if you see me looking down, I'm not texting. I'm actually trying to see if I can take notes on my phone instead of old school on this notepad. I got made fun of by some of our younger people on staff who were like, you write everything down on a notepad? And I was kind of like, well, yep, I do. See?
Well, now there's programs, Angela, that you can have running in the background that will just automatically type out like what is being said.
I think I need to get a little more with the tech times, but yeah, my old school tendencies have me writing things out, and then when we're done with this, because we use it all for our social media, I have to do a whole bunch of rewriting and time stamping. So just everyone, I am listening to you. I'm not being rude, I promise. So, okay, moving on. Lisa says, a competitor, Midi, has made some negative statements about Winona, and there have been several medical articles critiquing compounding of HRT. How do you respond to this feedback since it's a bit concerning? Good question, Lisa.
So let me grab that one. That's unfortunate. I don't really have bad things to say about our competitors. I think we're all out there trying to do the best we can and help women, and I think that's great. And different companies have different approaches. And I've always said competition is good for patients because it makes us all work a little bit harder and do a little bit better and bring you a better experience and a better product. So I don't have any ill will towards other companies. You won't hear me bashing them unless they're doing something really outrageous. So I think that's unfortunate, but it's a competitive environment and different people compete differently. We compete by trying to offer you the best, safest product in a great environment. We think we have the best customer service. We have the best doctors, Dr. Kat. We use only board certified physicians, and we offer a range of solutions that a lot of people don't. And so the compounded creams, again, come back in a month and you get to hear all about it. But the compounded creams are really powerful and really beneficial. The problem with compounding is that there is, you really need an excellent compounding pharmacy with compounding pharmacists that really know what they're doing. And so there can be variation in the quality of compounded products. And that's a little bit different than, say, a commercial patch or a pill that's, where Big Pharma has some giant factory in India and they're making, a huge quantity of these things and putting them out. And so it really is, it's a little bit, like I said, it's individual, it's got to be done correctly. And so one of the things that we offer is we control 2 compounding pharmacies, one in California and one in Idaho. And that allows us to put out really high quality compounded medications and allows us to offer this. Other companies don't have those compounding pharmacies, and so they don't have the ability to offer those products. And so, the way people sometimes compete then when they can't provide something is they denigrate it and say that it's no good. So ACOG and NAMS, which are sort of our 2 big organizations that sort of govern this stuff, govern is the wrong word, but make recommendations about this stuff. They both make the statement that you need to be careful about compounded medications for HRT. And I completely agree with them, you really do. So it doesn't say, you should never use this stuff. It says you just got to be really careful about where you're getting this from. And the problems are that you can call something, for instance, a progesterone cream, but you don't know, is there enough progesterone to really do the job? And so you can go on Amazon and buy a progesterone cream or an estrogen cream without a prescription. But I can tell you there's so little medicine in there that it's sort of estrogen or progesterone in name only. And so there have been problems for people that maybe they're getting an estrogen patch and they're using some progesterone cream from Amazon or some other source that doesn't really have the progesterone that it needs to have in there to work. And it can cause a lot of problems because you shouldn't be taking estrogen without an adequate dose of progesterone. With Winona, because we are making that cream and control that cream, we know that we're doing it right and we're putting in what needs to be put in there to protect you. So that's how we're able to do it. And that's how it's one of the things that one of the advantages we have over our competitors is that we're able to do this in a way that's safe and effective. And so it offers you another choice, another way to get your hormone replacement therapy on board. And for some women, it's a great choice. But that's kind of where all the negativity comes from, as far as I see it. There's very good data that the creams, both the estrogen and the progesterone, work well, but they have to be done right or they don't. And so, yes, there have been problems for women that get some product that they think has something in it and it doesn't really have it like it should. And so, that's where this is coming from. But you can rest assured that the compounded creams at Winona are safe, they're efficacious, they do what we claim, and they're made right. Because quite honestly, if they weren't, we aren't going to last very long. We've been really amazing. It's been an amazing ride. We're a very successful company. We've grown, very rapidly, and we've been very successful, and nobody wants to lose that. And so not only is the real motivation that we want to do the right thing for you, but, we also don't want to lose our business. So we've got to do it right. And so you can rest assured that our creams are safe and effective. So I hope that answers that question.
That's such a good answer. Thank you, Dr. Green, for speaking on that, because I see that a lot in social media too, where, there's lots of buzz about compounding. And again, everybody come to next month's session because we're going to unpack all the myths about compounding, and whatever you've heard, we'll set things straight if you haven't already been set straight. So please come. Okay, Lori wants to know, are bioidentical products FDA approved? That has been one of her doctor's arguments about not prescribing, yet there seems to be little hesitation to prescribe something synthetic. Ooh.
This is a good question. And so, there are HRT products out there that are available that are FDA approved that are bioidentical. Bioidentical just means that it's similar in structure and compound to what your body is naturally producing. So our products, because our products are bioidentical, our compounded cream is not FDA approved. However, I like to talk to patients about this because there's a lot of things in this world that we get benefit from that are not FDA approved, that can't possibly be FDA approved because they can't go through the rigorous process that the Food and Drug Administration puts out there in order to get a supplement or a medication approved. So if many of you take any vitamins or herbal supplements or anything that you swear by that really helps you on your day-to-day basis, none of that stuff is FDA approved. But your doctor still might recommend it. They still might recommend taking a magnesium supplement or taking a multivitamin or taking, fish oil capsules or something. But yet when it comes to medication, they seem very, very reluctant to do anything that's not FDA approved. However, it's like this double standard because they're fine with vitamins and minerals and herbal products, it seems like. So for you as the consumer, I think it's important for you to be knowledgeable about what you're going to put in your body and trust the source. And that's the same thing I tell patients when it comes to vitamin supplements. Obviously, if you're buying something cheap on Amazon and it's made in China and you don't know where it's coming from, you got to wonder, what quality are you getting? And like Dr. Green was talking about, because our products we trust our pharmacists, we think that the quality is very good. We tell you that we stand by the quality of our products. I can't guarantee what you're going to buy off the shelf, like at your corner store or through Amazon, is going to be the same quality. But you just have to consider the source whenever you're taking a supplement or a new medication. So that's the main thing. So FDA approval does not mean the best. It doesn't mean that it's the best thing out there. It just means that they've gone through that process of getting that approval, which most of the time it's the big pharmaceutical companies that can pay for that. So that's the main big difference.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. Orthotricycline was the first birth control pill that got FDA approval for treatment of acne. And I remember when that came out, that company was really smart. They spent a bunch of money and they did the rigorous FDA studies so that they could put on their label, treats acne. The truth is, all birth control pills treat acne. And we all knew that, and everybody knew that. But they were able to go on TV and advertise it, and because of that, they became the #1 birth control pill. Not because they were the best pill. They were fine. There was nothing wrong with them. But there wasn't anything special about their acne treatment, except they got to put that stamp on them. And so it always kind of cracked me up. It's like, well, good on them, but it really was a marketing thing. It wasn't really a science thing. And so FDA approval is important, and the FDA process, is an important, rigorous process. It's certainly not perfect, as we've seen, but it's not necessarily the sort of end all be all either.
Especially considering, how many medications do we use for indications, even in obstetrics and gynecology, that we're using them for an indication that they're not FDA approved for? Our induction medications specifically.
Yes, I was going to say
these things off label all the time, but we see the benefit of them and we see how they help patients. And even though they're not FDA approved for that specific indication, we see as clinicians that it helps the patient, so we use it. So,
yeah. I think it's so important too, like it really boils down to trust, right? You have to trust your physician. So whoever you're seeing as your OBGYN, like you just want to know that whatever information they're sharing with you is something that's truthful and you can really rely on, versus like kind of trying to navigate, especially in the, social media landscape, where if you're listening to all the hubbub on what person X's platform says and your friend and so, like, it's a lot of noise and you have to really go to the source. So like Dr. Green and Dr. Kat are two really reliable, honest, trustworthy people at Winona who are not gonna, sell you a load of bogus stuff. Like this is the real deal, right? And we are only here to share what's helpful and truthful. So please also know that at least when you're coming to these live Q&As, you're getting honest answers from people who really truly care about you and what you're putting in your body and our product. All of us care very much about helping you to make good decisions. Ultimately, those are up to you. But I just want to say also, as a Winona patient myself, like any person wants to trust their doctors. And these are two of some of the most trustworthy people I've met. So just as a solid plug for our people, just want to say that. Okay. Christina says, I'm onboarding and happy to get started. Her question is, how is HRT produced since it's not animal-based? What is it made from?
So our medications are plant-based. And I know that our source we used to talk about it being yam-based, but then there was a shortage of yams worldwide. Dr. Green, wasn't that right?
That's right, yeah. So there's this wild yam that everyone used to source their estrogen from, or really all their hormones. And then apparently there was this, like all of a sudden, it's like the farmer's saying, well, we can't really say that anymore. It's like, what happened? It's like there's this worldwide shortage of wild yams. So people were sourcing it from other vegetables or root vegetables that were similar to this wild yam, but we couldn't. So, we try to be really honest. It's like, well, we can't really say that anymore because some of it is, some of it isn't, just because of this shortage. But ultimately, it's all plant-based and bioidentical, plant-derived. So I think that was the question, right? But yeah. Exactly which plant kind of depends on kind of what they've got available, I guess.
Yeah. Who doesn't like a good root vegetable? I mean, you had to put in your body. It's all good. Elizabeth would like to know, she says, I just changed to the cream this month and was on the HRT pill form for almost 2 years. Is there more health risks to the pill versus the cream? The cream is working well, and she's tried the cream over a year ago and it wasn't as effective, but now is very helpful with her symptoms.
Well, so sometimes because the pills have to be processed by your gastrointestinal tract before they get to the intended tissues, sometimes we have to use a little higher dose in order to achieve a therapeutic effect for some patients. So in that sense, sometimes the transdermal or via the skin methods might be a little safer for patients. But honestly, we use dosages that are very safe for patients, and we generally start on the lower side and dial up as we need to and titrate until we get your symptoms under better control. Because in my mind, it's better to start low and adjust as needed rather than give you a dose that's too high that can be dangerous for you. And so that's generally our rule of thumb. And I think most of our doctors kind of go along that grain. We kind of have the same philosophy about how to adjust things. But so, all of our medications are equally as effective. And they're all safe, when given to patients that are appropriate candidates for the medication. But yeah, the transdermal methods might be a tad bit safer and less side effects and risk profile compared to the pills, just because of the way they're processed in your body.
Okay. Jennifer has a question about testosterone. I know Dr. Green loves this one. Well, everybody here loves this question, but it gets asked often. The question is, will you ever offer us testosterone cream? Jennifer is a current customer, and she says she's postmenopausal and has used the DHEA pills. So, write your congressman. The FDA, testosterone is a controlled substance, and so we can't legally provide it through the platform that we have. You really have to have an in-person visit. There are some
those are actually starting to go away now. There's some COVID rules that people use to get around this. So you'll say, well, other companies. So there are some companies that have done testosterone in a platform as ours using COVID rules, but those COVID rules mostly have gone away now. When we started Winona, we kind of decided, we're not going to rely on the COVID rules because we know they're temporary, and we don't want to bait and switch people and start them on something and then all of a sudden, well, you can't have this anymore, but here's something else. So we thought that was not kind of a fair way to do that. So we built Winona based on the rules that are going to be around even after COVID. And we've seen those most of those rules have changed now. So legally, we can't do testosterone in this platform. However, testosterone is tricky, particularly for women. It's tricky for men too, but for women in particular, there's what's called a very narrow therapeutic index or therapeutic window, which means that the difference between the dose that works and the dose that causes side effects or that's toxic is really narrow, and there's not a lot of wiggle room. It's pretty easy to overshoot that and cause problems. And so like the testosterone pellets are become fairly popular, but I see a lot of patients that get bad side effects from the pellets because they're really hard to dose. It's really easy to push the testosterone too high. So that's one of the things that's really beneficial about DHEA. In the doses that we prescribe, 25 to 50 milligrams, it's enough to get your testosterone levels to sort of normal female levels, but not enough to push them really beyond that. So now that's not totally true with DHEA because DHEA is a performance-enhancing drug. So there are athletes, bodybuilders that use these enormous doses of DHEA and really push their testosterone levels really high up there. And so it can be done with DHEA, but not in the dose that we prescribe. And so with DHEA, it's a lot easier to manage to get you that testosterone benefit you need without pushing you into those dangerous testosterone side effects. So, there's a practical reason that we don't do testosterone, but honestly, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It's a lot safer to do it the way that we do it. I think for most women, the DHEA offers them enough testosterone to give them the results they're looking for. It's not going to be a performance-enhancing drug for you. So if you're looking at getting really big in the gym using testosterone, you be you, but that's what we're doing isn't really going to do that for you. But if you're looking for, testosterone in the way that you need it as hormone replacement therapy, for most women, I think the DHEA is sufficient and works quite well.
All right,
but yeah,
Gina.
Write your congressman, and maybe we can change things.
Gina has a question. She says, what about women who took oral BCP many years, never had kids? If you're now in your early 40s and having insane sweating, bed night sweats, fatigue, and weight gain. She's a former athlete, feels like crap. Did taking oral BCP many years cause her to become dependent on synthetic hormones?
No. The short answer to that is no. But being on birth control pills for many years basically is suppressing your body's own hormone fluctuations. So sometimes what we see is that when women finally stop their birth control pills, they get like a rebound of symptoms, and suddenly their body's own inherent hormonal production just kind of goes haywire because it's like, hey, we're free. The ovaries are free to do what they want. I like to talk about the organs like they have a personality. But like suddenly all of a sudden the ovaries are no longer controlled, and so like they're let loose, like they're doing what they want to do. And so sometimes you can get this rebound of symptoms. And we see this with patients that were on birth control for a long time and then maybe get their tubes tied and then all of a sudden go off birth control and then have all these crazy symptoms come in too. So this doesn't mean that you're going to be dependent on synthetic hormones. Your body's amazing, and your body's own hormonal production and what happens in your body is going to happen whether you try to suppress it or not. And so by doing by taking birth control, you didn't ruin like your body's own natural hormones. So don't be afraid of that. And that doesn't mean you're dependent on synthetics. I think it's, what you might be experiencing is just kind of exacerbated or worsened by the fact that like suddenly right now you're uncontrolled and things are, wild, for lack of a better way to describe it.
Like Angela's cat.
I have a cat who really likes to do things while this webinar is going on for attention. So, okay, Jana would like to know, she says she's started her Winona prescription and the side effects have been challenging. Heartburn, nausea and vomiting, loose stool, chronic low-grade headache, and feeling of fullness in her uterus like it's the day before her period every day. How have other patients handled this?
I would say a lot of the side effects you're mentioning are not very common. I do not have a lot of patients complain of those. The feeling of fullness in the uterus, I would say, I do have a lot of patients that talk about feeling bloating and feeling that sensation. And that's typically something that's temporary. But generally, I recommend to patients to kind of watch their water intake, watch their salt intake. This is the time as your body's getting adjusted to the medication that you really want to put in the extra effort to focus on nutrition and really make sure that you're putting healthy foods, not processed things, trying to eat really, a whole foods diet and making sure that you get enough fiber in your diet, that you're having normal bowel movements. Because if you're, adding a medication into the mix that can kind of change everything in your body, and then you're also not eating great, not eating healthy, which, we're all just getting past the holidays. I'm sure we've had way too many Christmas cookies, holiday cookies, and casseroles, and all kinds of things that we don't typically eat. So all of our GI tracts are probably crying for some fresh roughage right now. But that's something that I tell patients to focus on. As you're getting through this adjustment period, really try to focus on optimizing your sleep, optimizing your water intake, and optimizing your nutrition. And it'll really help with this transition period and help your body get through it so that you can get over this hump of these side effects.
Yeah, I would add right into your Winona physician, because there may be a way to kind of adjust your medicines for a few weeks to help get you through this. And so that on top, of all those other things, absolutely. But they're also, give us a holler through the portal on the site, because we may be able to help you adjust things a little bit to get you past this little bump in the road. These side effects should go away, and sometimes we can make it a little bit easier for the first few weeks.
Okay. All right. CS has a question. Can you speak to cyclical HT during perimenopause? Is there an advantage to cyclical HT versus OCPs?
So let me grab that one.
Versus OCPs or versus regular?
Versus continuous. Well, I'm going to answer, I'll take a shot at both.
Okay.
So a while back, I think it's been maybe 15 years, somewhere in that range, this data came out that said that women that were on estrogen-only HRT did not have an increased risk of breast cancer. And there's actually some data that they may have a slight decreased risk. But women that were on estrogen and progesterone HRT together had a slight increased risk of breast cancer. So that's kind of where this started. And so women that have had a hysterectomy, basically, that don't need the progesterone, don't have that same small increased risk of breast cancer that women that still have a still have their uterus and need progesterone. And so there was this idea that, maybe we should try to limit the amount of progesterone we're giving women in the HRT. And so people come up with these different ways of doing it. You could dose progesterone every other day, or you could do it cyclically like we do birth control pills. Maybe only give it 14 days out of the month or 10 days out of the month. And some people will try doing it even more beyond that. Let's keep you on estrogen all the time and only shoot you with progesterone once every 3 months and give you 14 days of progesterone once a quarter. And all those things are safe. The bummer is, especially for women that had stopped having periods, it would give you a period. And so women kind of didn't like that. I don't blame them. I mean, who would want to have a period? Like, I've had women say, that's the only good thing about menopause is my period stopped. I don't want to have periods again. And so, this was an idea that kind of got popular for a while. And that was, the idea was, maybe we can decrease the progesterone. And so data has come out since then. And what they found is that it actually doesn't decrease, doesn't really help, doesn't do what we were hoping for. And it doesn't work any better, and it tends to have more side effects. So there really isn't an advantage to cyclical HRT, and there's a lot of disadvantages to it, particularly in that it's a bigger hassle, causes more side effects, and it can cause bleeding. So for the vast majority of women, continuous HRT, taking estrogen and progesterone every day, no matter what's going on with your cycle, is generally the best way to do it. There are exceptions, and I do have some patients on cyclical HRT for really specific reasons. So there are times when it may be worthwhile, but in general, as a whole, there's really no advantages, and it tends to cause more side effects. But that was a movement that happened really in an attempt to do something good, and then we had enough time to collect data and said, oh, it was a good idea, but it didn't work. That's too bad. So kind of, I think most people that have been following the data and the research have gone back to continuous HRT because it's really kind of the best way to do it.
Okay. Next question. Christina wants to know if HRT can help with weight loss and joint pain.
It absolutely can. I mean, I think that especially when weight gain around this time in life is hormonally related. A lot of women talk about, all of a sudden their metabolism changes, and suddenly, when they're going through perimenopause or even menopause, they develop this, collection of excess weight in the mid belly and what we call the menobelly. So sometimes that's related to high cortisol levels. Women dealing with insomnia that comes with the perimenopause and all these hormone changes. And so sometimes they're living in this constant state of fight or flight. And so that accumulates with, accumulation of weight on our body. Like our body is unconsciously trying to save calories and save energy for the caveman fight that we're going to have with the dinosaur or whatever, that's not going to happen. But anyway, so taking the HRT can definitely help with weight loss because it helps to kind of bring us back to a normal environment with those hormones and helps reduce our cortisol levels. Also, when it comes to estrogen, it's so beneficial to every tissue throughout our body. So a lot of times when women start to develop joint pain, especially around this perimenopause and menopause timeframe, adding in estrogen helps those joints to function like normal again. Now, there's a lot of other things that can cause joint pain, so I can't promise every patient that HRT is going to cure them of every joint pain they're ever going to have, because joints get wear and tear just with age and repetitive activity. So, HRT is not going to reverse the effects of arthritis or any injuries we've had throughout our lifetime. But if it's joint pain related to your other menopausal symptoms, it definitely will help with that.
Christina has another question, which is, how do you control dosage with cream?
So basically, we can change the strength of the components of the cream. So, for a lot of our patients, we use a combination estrogen and progesterone HRT cream. And so we can change the concentration of each of those hormone components for each patient so that we come up with what dosage we think would be best for you. And we can make adjustments based on how your symptoms respond to the dosage that we order.
Let me jump on that one. There was an interesting question I got through this morning or yesterday, I can't remember, from a patient about this, in that the pump, so the cream comes with a metered pump that puts out a precise amount of cream. And so someone asked, well, gee, how accurate is that pump really? Am I going to get a more precise dose if I take the pills? And what people don't realize is that pills are allowed by the FDA to have a 15% variance in the amount of medicine in the pill. So pill can be off by 15% in the dose of medicine and still be, quote, legal. So pills aren't as precise as you might think. The pump has also a 15% accuracy. So it's really in there the same as the pill or the patch for that matter. And one of the reasons we generally prescribe it as 2 pumps is that if there's a little variance, it averages out over time. And so you get a really, you get at least an as accurate dose with the pump mechanism and the cream as you would with a pill or with a patch. So just so you know, because I think it's something that a lot of people don't understand, is how the pharmaceutical industry works, and how there can be variance or variation in the actual amount of chemical in that pill of medicine in the actual pill that you take compared to filler.
Dr. Green coming at you with facts today.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I'm literally learning with everyone else. I did not know that either. So
wait, let me be like everyone else. Competitors bad, Winona good.
Yeah, see? But I didn't know that. I'm learning too. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that fact. Now I feel fully armed when people want to ask more questions. I can say, well, Dr. Green said. Okay, Tammy has a question. She says she just started HRT and DHEA. Previous symptoms are much better, but now dealing with abdominal water retention, and it's very uncomfortable. Any suggestions on what to do?
Well, I touched on this a little bit earlier about, talking about optimizing your sleep and your nutrition and water intake. But really, if the bloating and the water retention really becomes bothersome and doesn't really respond to, really optimizing your diet and really focusing on those things, then the other option you have too is that you could do a short course of like an over-the-counter water pill too. I have had some patients that have needed to do that just for some temporary relief. It's not something we want you to take forever, but just to kind of get over the hump. But most of my patients, their bodies will respond to, just watching their salt intake, watching what they're, doing as far as hydration status and really their diet as well.
I think we touched on this earlier. Tammy's follow-up question was, how long does one stay on HRT? I think we mentioned it in the beginning, but if anybody wants to do a quick recap.
Yeah. I think that the important part of this is that it's individualized for each patient, right? And so, part of starting any kind of treatment is that with the provider or the doctor that's giving you the treatment, this should be a shared decision-making process. And so, we have general recommendations for what we think might help, but you know your body the best. And so this is an ongoing discussion you can have with your physician about, when you want to try to go off of it. We'll have patients try to go off medication after a few years, and if their symptoms come back, maybe they want to go back on. But every woman is unique, and we don't know, we can't tell you, we don't have a crystal ball that says, yes, you're going to need to take this for 6.5 years, and then you'll be good. So it's really an individual thing, and we just have to kind of play it by ear and reevaluate over time with how you're doing and how your symptoms are.
Yeah. I want a menopause ball.
Right?
I'd rather have a lottery one, no offense.
Dear Magic Menopause Ball, when will I be done with this? I think that's awesome. Okay, Shauna says she's currently onboarding to the Winona program. Yay, congratulations, Shauna. She's excited to get started. And her previous doctor required hormone levels prior to starting HRT. Why does Winona not require hormone levels?
Well, so the guidelines really, from those national societies that Dr. Green mentioned earlier, actually, nobody really recommends treating based on hormone levels anymore, especially when it comes to menopause. This isn't like a thyroid disorder or isn't like treating an anemia where we're looking at levels and trying to treat based, to change that number. Hormone levels, hormones are released in such a pulsatile fashion that the hormone levels can vary from time of day. They can change based on what day of the week you're getting the levels taken, or if you've had a meal before the blood test or not. So they're not very reliable for us to really get a good picture of what's going on. Often I've had patients over the years that, their physicians have refused to treat them because every time they check their levels, their estrogen level is normal or their FSH is normal. But then these patients come in with this notebook of symptoms of how many hot flashes they're dealing with and night sweats. And we can look at your symptom log or your symptom profile, and we can tell you what's going on and what we think would help. A lab is not going to give us the information that's as helpful to us than your symptoms are. So that's why we don't require the hormone levels. They really don't help us to figure out what dose is good for you, or even to help us to adjust your dosage to help your symptoms better. So that's one of the biggest fallacies, I think. And I think there's still a lot of providers across the country that are still forcing women to go through all this hormone testing and basing treatment or withholding treatment based on hormone testing. And it's just really not necessary, unfortunately.
Plus, think about this. You don't want to be gaslit by your doctors, do you? Because you're going in saying, I have all these things, and they're like, yeah, but your hormone level says you're good, right?
So, yeah, we're not here to make the levels on paper look nice. We're here to make you feel good and get you 100%. regardless of what the number on the little lab sheet says. So that's the important thing. Your body is a much more sensitive assay than any lab test we have. And so we rely on your body because it really gives us the information we need.
Okay, Eureka, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, says they started almost 2 weeks ago and wanted to say the horrible, severe hot flashes are almost gone. Yay. Hope they stay gone, but I hear they could come back. Had them every 20 minutes. She's 49.
I would say that, hopefully they don't come back. I don't know. Was there a question in that?
I think she's wanting reassurance they're not coming back. I think that's what the gist is. Like someone tell me.
I've had patients that get great relief from the medication and their hot flashes really improve. And then with time, like as we continue to age and our own ovarian production of our own inherent hormones changes, sometimes we might see a little resurgence of symptoms. I've also had patients that have gone through recent illnesses, like if they've had the flu or they've had COVID recently, suddenly all of a sudden their symptoms are coming back with a vengeance, because we have this, term in medicine, and you might know it's like homeostasis. It's like the status quo of our body and our optimal functioning of our body. So whenever you throw a wrench in that, whether it's increased stress or, an illness or something like that, you can see a resurgence of symptoms. But also as your ovaries continue to change their production of their own hormones, you might need an adjustment in dosage. But things should not go back to the way they were when you're untreated. It just might need tweaking a little bit.
Dawn would like to know, she's on week 3 using progesterone and estrogen cream. She's 46 and wants to know what sexual side effects can she expect using that, higher or lower libido?
For most women, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I think, for most women, this is beneficial. It's actually really rare. I can't think of people that have their libido or their sexual function have gone down or decreased from the cream. For some people, it helps more than others. And for some people, it's like a miracle thing. For others, like, that didn't help as much as I hoped, and then we need to adjust or add things. But really haven't had patients that said that things got worse. Have you?
No, not when it comes to libido, no. I did have a patient once complain to me that she got too much lubrication and it was bothersome because she was having too much repair of her vaginal dryness. And I was like, that's not a problem I usually hear women complain about. But
there is a trick to that. Actually, it sounds funny, but diaper rash ointment can help. Because sometimes, when people have too much lubrication, they're just wet all the time and skin doesn't like that. And you can get a rash from that. So a little Destin cream, just go down the baby aisle, or and even some hydrocortisone cream can help with that if it kind of becomes an overabundance, but too healthy state, so to speak.
Agreeing with the life hacks again. Okay. Jennifer says she's 49. She's been in perimenopause and was having regular but very heavy periods over the past few years. She was diagnosed with, I'm going to mispronounce this, correct me if I'm saying it wrong, you guys, adenomyosis? Am I saying that?
Adenomyosis?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's what I said. And she just had a hysterectomy, uterus, cervix, fallopian tubes last week. She wants to know, what changes can she expect in perimenopause state post-hysterectomy? She was not experiencing hot flashes, night sweats, or sleeplessness prior to surgery.
Well, so the key in there when someone tells me about having a hysterectomy is what specific organs they had removed. So if she had her uterus, cervix, and fallopian tubes removed, none of those are hormone producing. So as long as she still has her ovaries, then she's going to continue to go through the same normal phases of menopause than she would if she had never had the hysterectomy. So it's typically women that have their ovaries removed at the time their uterus is removed that we see this sudden onset of what we consider to be surgical menopause, which is one day you have ovaries that are functioning, the next day they're cut out, and suddenly there's a complete stoppage of estrogen production. because the organs are not there anymore. So you really shouldn't see any significant, like acute or, sharp changes, but because you're 49, this is the time that changes are happening and your body is changing, and the ovaries are going to be changing their own production over this time anyway. So I would say this shouldn't change that time clock or that process for you significantly because you kept your ovaries.
I don't know if you've noticed this. There's a small subset of patients that I've seen where we leave the ovaries in and they still kind of get this sort of not quite as bad as when we take the ovaries out, but they get sort of this bump of symptoms. And I think there's probably some disruption of blood flow to the ovaries, even though they have been from the hysterectomy. Yeah. I mean, they do have their own blood supply that in theory shouldn't get disrupted. But we're kind of doing a lot of work down there. And I mean, there is a little bit of blood supply coming over back and forth from the uterus. But I mean, the IFP, the big blood supply is still intact. But I have noticed that in some patients that get this sort of this bump of worsening. And I think that's what it is. I think there's probably some blood supply issues just from all the manipulation that's going on down there.
So I think years ago, before we were in the habit of removing tubes with every hysterectomy, we basically found out in the world of gynecology that the fallopian tubes were the source of cancer, not the ovaries, where we thought previously. So, when I was in training, we left fallopian tubes in. We just took the uterus out. Now we're taking the fallopian tubes out because it's those finger-like projections on the end of the tube, the fimbria, which are the source of cancer. And they're so close to the ovary. I swear that when we're getting those dissected out, there has to be some lateral spread from our surgical tools that are really causing some change in blood supply. So I think that's the main factor for a lot of those patients.
Yeah, it's an interesting observation.
Well, we're digressing and talking about surgery now. We should get back on topic.
Oh, but that's so interesting. I mean, I don't know. Sorry. We'll keep going with the questions, but I find that fascinating. Okay. Jennifer says she was suffering from heavy bleeding and cascading effects of that, weakness, anemia, heart palpitations. What kind of bioidentical HRT would be helpful in this situation? She's been reluctant to try prescription HRT because she's been taking progesterone for a few months to mitigate the bleeding leading up to the surgery and have had horrible adverse effects, mood swings, weight gain, extreme bloating, joint pain, so horrible that she finally chose to have surgery just to get off the prescription. Are these kinds of effects something to be concerned about with bioidentical hormones?
Well, the big thing there is that if you were taking Agestin, that is a progesterone-only medication. And a lot of patients don't tolerate taking progesterone alone just because of the side effect profile. So I would say don't make that experience of taking the Agestin cloud your hopefulness with how HRT may help you. I think that you would benefit, from taking combination estrogen and progesterone. And also the progestin that's in Agestin is not bioidentical. It's not what your body is producing naturally. So that may be why you may have had some of those, what you called horrible adverse effects from it. So I think that, really try to remember that this is a completely different mode. The Agestin was trying to suppress your period and trying to control the bleeding. And what we're doing with the HRT is to trying to add back what your body's no longer producing naturally. And the medications are more like what your body produces on its own. And so generally well tolerated, better than those other medications. So I think that these could help you.
So did I hear she had a hysterectomy? Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, I think this is the same gender, isn't it?
Okay, then you won't even need the progesterone, so you'll just be able to use estrogen only. So it's a completely different
medication. Right, that's true, yeah.
So you don't have to worry about the Agestin or the progestin-like effects because you can be prescribed just estrogen. So I agree with everything you said, and then it just struck me, wait a minute, we shouldn't need the progesterone. But there is a huge difference for a lot of people between the synthetic progesterone, the progestins, and micronized progesterone. But for you, it's even bigger because you don't need a progesterone at all. So it should be even more beneficial.
Okay, Melanie. She says, if symptoms do suddenly come back and then you give it more time to rebound and stabilize, does this mean we should expect the up and down response throughout our treatment, or will this just occur in the beginning?
I would say not every woman experiences that, and it's not something to expect necessarily. And typically, once we get the right dose that works for you and your symptoms really improve, there really is not this up and down response throughout the course of taking the medication. Like once we find the right dosage, most women are pretty happy and things stay stable.
Yeah, there's definitely an adjustment period, really in the first few weeks to a month and a half. And once you get past that, things kind of mellow out and are just good, and you don't get that ups and downs.
Okay, Christina wants to know, can anxiety be reduced enough to stop taking an anti-anxiety medication, same for cholesterol and a statin?
I would say it depends on the patient. I have had a lot of patients come to us with, being on antidepressants or being on anti-anxiety medication or even ADHD medication. That's a real common one because the brain fog of perimenopause often gets misdiagnosed as like adult onset ADHD. And after they start their HRT and we find an optimal dose, a lot of those patients are able to come off of that. But these, disorders like anxiety, depression, if it didn't come on with all the other menopause symptoms, these can be multifactorial. There can be a lot of things that are playing into this. And so, I don't want patients to have an unreasonable expectation that HRT is going to fix everything in their life. It may not. But if it's related to the perimenopausal symptoms or menopausal symptoms, it very well might help with that. Now, for the cholesterol and the statin, a lot of that has to do with your family history, your body's composition. I think that it's something that I don't think we can promise that going on HRT would make you have to, that you would be able to stop like cardiac meds and cholesterol meds and things like that. I haven't really seen that for a lot of patients. Generally, if you're to the point where you need a statin to help treat your cholesterol, you usually end up having to stay on that long term, unfortunately. But Dr. Green's nodding too.
I mean, HRT does decrease LDL, increase HDL, but not, for most people, not enough to get them off their statin, quite honestly. It's a subtle difference.
Sort of on the same topic, Mercy wants to know, can perimenopause or menopause cause depression-like symptoms?
Absolutely. So, many women start to notice that more than anything else initially because it's the mood changes because you're not sleeping well. You're up in the middle of the night with night sweats, and it really can affect your resilience as a person. And, we all have a threshold that we can handle. And sometimes you throw all these other symptoms into the mix and our body can only take so much. And so I do see a lot of patients that present with anxiety or depression as one of their initial symptoms when they start experiencing these changes of perimenopause and menopause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First,
two on the screen right now. Yeah.
Yep. And you start going like, wait, what's going on? This is not normal. Okay. Dawn Marie is asking our crystal ball question. She says she's on Winona HRT for 2 weeks and wants to know when she should start experiencing weight loss. Who's ready for that answer? Either of you.
To me, I think that most patients get benefits from the other symptoms first. Weight loss takes a little bit longer. So, I think that in my experience, once we get your dose optimized and your other symptoms under control, most patients start to notice the benefit of the weight loss, like in month 3, 4, 5 of treatment. So it's not one of those things initially you see, but you have to kind of stick with it. It's the consistency and getting those other symptoms under control first, and then we see the weight loss benefit come later.
Okay. Let's see how many more questions we have. We're almost there, you guys. Thanks for being patient. Tina, she just turned 50 and has been taking Winona for about 3 months. She started having regular periods again, and her PMS symptoms have returned. For reference, her periods were irregular for 6 months. Oh, and there's more. Sorry, she says. And her question is this common?
Well, so it sounds like you probably weren't done having periods. So until you've gone a full year without having a cycle, we can't really say that you were done. So, if you didn't have cycles for 6 months or 7 months, but then started HRT and started having some periods again, that means your body really wasn't done yet. And so it's, HRT doesn't like kickstart or restart your period. But sometimes it can help regulate it if it's irregular. So, this can be common for some patients, but being that you're 50, I would hope that you're coming toward the end of that journey soon, because the average age for most women to stop having cycles is 51, 52. So hopefully that'll come for you soon too.
Okay. Next question. Let's see. Joelle says she currently uses HRT from a compounding pharmacy. Out of curiosity, what are average costs for estrogen and testosterone HRT through Winona? A range is fine if it depends on concentration.
So I'll take that one. So the cream is $79 for a month supply, or $199 for 3 months supply. So you get about a 15% discount because it costs us less for shipping, and pharmacists don't have to make it as often and stuff in the packaging. So we pass that along. So that's the price for the cream, whether it's estrogen and progesterone, basically for all of our doses. Here's the interesting thing that I've learned a lot from our compounding curve. This is one of the things that surprised me. The cost in the cream is not from the medication. The cost in the cream is the base cream. So that's where all the expense is. So as long as we don't have to give you more cream, we just have to put more medicine in it. It doesn't change our cost, so we don't charge you more. There's dosages that we get to where we can only kind of cram so much medicine into the cream to keep the consistency of the cream, like, the way you want it. And so if we get to the really high doses, then we have to use a higher amount of cream, and that's where the price will go up a little bit because the cost of the cream goes up. But that's kind of pretty far down the road for most people. Most people never really get there. But that's the cost of the cream. We do, as we talked earlier, we don't put testosterone in our cream. We use DHEA, which gets broken down into estrogen and testosterone. Those are capsules, and those are $25 for a 3-month supply. And the truth is, we only supply a 3-month supply, and the reason is it's just too costly to handle it and pay for the bottles and the shipping, and there's just not enough left over for us to do it monthly. It just doesn't make sense. So it's pretty inexpensive, $24 for 3 months, and that's how we supply the DHEA. So I think it was just for the creams and the testosterone, correct? Or do you want me to talk about the pills and I don't know if you want me to go over the price of the products.
I think she just said estrogen and testosterone. Yeah.
But the other thing to remember is that if you're getting your HRT from a local compounding pharmacy, I assume that means there's somebody managing that HRT. So you're also probably paying for your doctor's visits. Most of these people tend to do labs, so you're probably paying for that as well. With Winona, that cost is everything. So we don't charge you shipping, we don't cost you for doctor's visits, we don't do labs because it's not the right way to do it, as we talked about earlier. So that's the whole cost. And you never have to leave your computer except to poke your head outside and see if the mailman showed up and put it in your mailbox. So there's a big convenience factor as well that you get. So there's a lot of benefit, but that's the price, and I think it's pretty reasonable.
Yeah. Okay. Lisa's quick question is, can you take HRT if you have heart disease, specifically coronary artery disease?
Well, I think that it depends on the degree of what the heart disease is. If you have significant coronary artery disease where you've required surgical procedures or you've required significant medication, I think it would probably not be best for you to get HRT through telemedicine, just because you are higher risk and really need to see somebody in person to make sure that you're being followed very closely. That goes along with too, like I've had patients that come on board with us that in the questionnaire process, I find out they might have an artificial heart valve and they're on blood thinners. that's also something that really puts you into a higher category of high risk that you really need to be monitored very closely. And so it would be better to see a provider in person if you decide to do HRT. So, for coronary artery disease, if it's significant, I think that you might not be a great candidate to do it via telemedicine. That doesn't mean you can't take HRT, but it means you need to see somebody in person rather than on a telemedicine platform.
All right, Roseanne has an interesting question. She's 57 and has been doing bioidentical hormone pellets for the past 4 years with great results. She says she's totally healthy and wondered how she can transition over to Winona as she ages.
So we have a lot of patients that transfer us from the pellets. The pellets are, invasive, they're expensive, they kind of hurt a little bit, and they're inconvenient. And for some people, they work really well. And some people like that they only have to go in every 3 to 4 months. The other problem with pellets is that if you have side effects, you're kind of stuck with them for 3 to 4 months. So we get a lot of patients transfer to us from pellets, and it's a really easy transition, really. We just get you on the medication, and you just overlap, and it works quite well. I've got a ton of happy patients that have gone from the pellets to the cream or the pills or the patches. So it's actually a very easy transition, and I have, like I said, it works quite well. I have a lot of satisfied, happy patients that do that.
Okay, let's see. Who else? We have Deb. Are there any allergy concerns with the cream if using plant-based like soy? I mean, I guess that's a question about if you have a soy allergy, but we don't use soy in our products.
Yeah, there's no soy in our products. These are pretty unusual to have an allergy to any of our products. Once in a blue moon, somebody gets a rash or you get hives. And so you get these sort of rare allergies, but they're not predictable. So I really can't think of any allergies that someone would come in with that would preclude them for using a cream. The exception is that the progesterone capsules, so if you're going to do the pill form, those are in peanut oil. So if you have a peanut allergy, you can't use progesterone capsules. And then, as Dr. Katz said at the very beginning, people that have adhesive allergies, the patches have an adhesive, and so that wouldn't work well. But for the cream, I can't really think of any sort of allergies that people come in with that would preclude them from using the creams.
Okay. We have two sort of related questions by different people. I'm going to combine them. Question is, approximately when should I see some weight loss? They've been doing HRT for about a year, and the other person is asking, when can we expect bloating to go away? So it's in the same ballpark, in my opinion. Have at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for most of my patients, they end up seeing weight loss, like the most weight loss at months 4 to 6 of treatment. And so if it's been a year and you're really not seeing weight loss, it might mean that we need to tweak things a little bit. As far as the bloating, that's typically an initial adjustment that your body has to make. And so, usually we see that in the first couple months, and then it usually improves. And so if it hasn't improved by like month 2 or 3, then we might need to talk about tweaking things a little bit, or, just changing something to help with those symptoms.
Yeah,
Somebody corrected us saying congressman too, and said we should say congressperson. So touche.
I apologize.
Dr. Green. I was like, oh, yep, I should make a comment in the chat, but thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, let me write on, if you don't mind, about the weight loss. Generally, if you've been on the medicine for a year, maybe there's a dose tweaking that needs to happen, or maybe there's another reason that you're not losing weight. So could have a thyroid disorder. That might be something we're checking, because that could also, if the thyroid's not functioning properly, that can keep you from losing weight or make you gain weight. But also there can be some habits that you don't even realize. A lot of people, they think they're calorie restricting, and then if they really, I tell people for 2 weeks, track everything you put in your mouth and track those calories. You may be surprised that you're getting in more calories than you think. So sometimes it's, behavioral things that the hormones aren't going to fix. So there's weight loss is tricky, and HRT should help quite a bit, but sometimes you need more than that, or there may be something else going on. So there's other things to think about. Like we were saying, HRT doesn't fix every ailment that you have. Helps a lot of things, but there are things that aren't from the menopause transition.
The other thing that I think is really important that I keep letting patients know is that I think a lot of us in midlife as women don't realize how much protein we actually need to ingest, to maintain muscle, and especially to lose weight. So because if you're not getting enough protein in your diet, especially like for my vegetarian patients, they might struggle with getting enough protein, or just if you're not taking enough protein, you're not going to lose fat, because your body needs some fuel to keep going, and it needs those calories from protein to be able to do that, to burn the fat. So that's an important thing too. I think if you look at and you're tracking your food, like Dr. Green mentioned, don't be afraid to track those macros too and see how much protein are you actually really getting in, because most of us are not getting in enough. And when I realized how much I should take in based on my height, I was probably at half of what I should have been ingesting before I started keeping track of it. So I think a lot of us are probably, guilty of that as well.
Yep. Okay, Eureka says she's underweight and wants to know, will I lose more weight with this treatment? She hopes not. People in the chat, don't be mad at Eureka.
Yeah, I know, right? That's a unique problem to have, Eureka. No, and I think if you're underweight. Oh, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes it easier to lose weight if if that's something that you need, but it doesn't keep you from gaining weight, or if you're underweight, it won't make you lose more weight. So it's not like an appetite suppressant or something like that. So you shouldn't have that problem with it.
Crystal would like to know, this is a good question. Should we rotate application sites of the cream? She's read that receptors can get oversaturated, for instance, apply to forearms, then next inner thighs, etc. She wants to know what you guys think.
And I've had patients that are quite successful sticking to the same site and do fine with that. I've had other patients that like to rotate and do better with that as well. I think that it's a personal decision. To me, I don't think that there's necessarily specific receptors in any one part of the skin in any part of your body that are going to get oversaturated per se. I think that generally it's about the thickness of the skin and how well the medication is absorbed. So, if you're a patient who uses the inner forearm to apply the cream, but then maybe you're very active and you're washing your hands multiple times a day, or maybe, you do something and it's not absorbing or something like that, then maybe transition to behind the knee or something like that. Every patient can kind of experiment a little bit, as long as you're applying the cream on a non-hair bearing part of the body. Generally you do well, but you don't have to rotate sites, in my opinion. I don't know what you would add for that, Dr. Green.
Yeah, it's not really binding to receptors in the skin. So, I mean, that receptor issue for other medications can be important, but it's not the way that the mechanism is working. It's really being taken up and delivered into your blood system. And so it's not a receptor issue. So it's an interesting thought, but I think for HRT, it's sort of moot because that's not the mechanism of how it's working. I have had some patients that get some sensitivity, and then rotating sites helps that. So if you have real sensitive skin, where you tend to kind of react to creams, then rotating sites may help keep that from happening. But most people, I think, kind of get a habit and they stick to one area, and that's how it works. And you really have very few problems with skin issues from the cream.
Okay, Christina would like to know if you can take supplements along with HRT, or will it be overkill and cause issues?
Well, it depends on the supplement. I caution patients to stay away from any supplements that could be hormone containing. Specifically, like estrogen is a very common one that a lot of women take. Just because I don't think it's necessarily dangerous, but I think that if you're taking anything that could have natural plant estrogens, it can interfere with us trying to find the optimal dosage for you. And because we don't really know what's in that and how it might combine with your medication, I just caution patients to stay away from that. If you're taking other supplements that are non-hormonal in nature that you do well with and they seem to do well for you, there's no reason to stop those when you're starting your medication. But when you're doing onboarding with us, one of the most important things is to really be transparent and let us know exactly what you're taking so that we know and we can look through your med list and make sure that everything you're taking is safe and is not going to interact negatively with the medication. So, and that goes for any doctor, any provider you're going to see. Make sure that when they give you a med list to fill out, that you are thorough and comprehensive and write down everything you're taking, because we can't make sure you're safe unless we really know what you're ingesting and we can make sure we look out for interactions. So,
the two people you never want to lie to is your doctor and your attorney, right? So, don't let us know what you're on. The other thing is that supplements are expensive, and a lot of the things that you're trying to help with the supplements get help with the HRT, and so they're no longer necessary once the HRT is on board and working, and you can save a bunch of money by not using these supplements that have become redundant with the HRT. So that's kind of another one of the benefits of HRT.
I kind of skipped ahead because I was scrolling through the remaining questions, and sort of on this same note, someone was asking, are there any supplements you should not take with HRT?
Yeah, I just recommend that no hormonal supplements, basically, like the estrogen. The other thing that I usually caution patients against is the DIM supplement. I see a lot of patients taking that. It's like diindolylmethane something or other. It's supposed to change your estrogen metabolism, and we really don't have a lot of data as to how that can affect how your body processes any estrogen that you're taking. So I usually tell patients to stop that as well. So anything that's hormonal in nature, or that's says on their package that it's supposed to help modulate hormones or change hormone metabolism, I usually stay away from those while we were starting HRT.
Yeah, I got to look this up. Sorry, there was a patient today that asked about a specific supplement. I'm looking at my other screen so I can tell you what it was called. It was called, and pardon me, I'm old. Jin Yam, which sounds really exotic. But unfortunately, I took a picture of the ingredient list, and it was DHEA. It's like, oh, that was it. It's like, wow, what an interesting marketing tool, to call DHEA this sort of exotic, mystical name. I thought that was kind of amusing. But so read the ingredient list, because if you're already taking DHEA from us, you don't want to add more DHEA or end up with too much. So it can be surprising what's in some of these things. So do read the list of ingredients.
Okay. Linda, I'm going to combine her two questions. She wants to know, one, is HRT helpful for women that are postmenopausal, and how long can you take HRT if you're 57 and postmenopausal?
So if you're still having symptoms that are bothersome, even though you've completed menopause, yes, it can be helpful to take HRT. The key is starting HRT while it's still safe for you, which is generally before the age of 60 for most women. So if you're 57 and you're having symptoms that are bothersome, then yes, it's a safe time to start HRT at this point. And really, again, like we talked about earlier, it's a shared decision-making process with your physician who's prescribing as to how long you want to stay on it and when you decide you want to go off of the medication. So it could be a few years, could be 10 years. Some patients say you'll have to pry the estrogen out of their cold, dead hands. I often see female OB-GYNs say that, of all people. That, like, they feel so great on HRT that you better not take it away or threaten to take it away or under penalty of death. So,
and just to be clear, that 60 number is for starting HRT.
Yes.
You don't have to go off right when you turn 68. So if you're 57 and it's working great and it's still relieving your symptoms, you don't have to stop it when you're 60. You can continue it. But we don't start people for the first time on HRT after age 60. It's two different things.
Yeah. I see a lot of people go like, oh, Winona won't prescribe to me. I'm over 60. And it's like, well, we actually want to protect you from additional possible problems. So that's not we're not ageist at Winona, right? It's for your safety. So
safety is the number one priority. I mean, if we don't keep you safe, we're not doing our job. So that's, we take your health really very, very seriously and very personally. We don't want to hurt you. And that's the most important thing.
Okay, I think we have just a couple more questions and then class is dismissed. Let's see. Katie would like to know, is there anything else that can help with calming cortisol and helping with menobelly? She's eating and sleeping well, but can still get triggered with cortisol and can't lose the belly.
Really, HRT, really, when we talk about this treatment modality. So, optimizing your female hormones and really helping with these symptoms can help reduce those cortisol levels overall. It can help a lot of women lose the weight, especially in the midsection.
Our next question is from Sue. She wants to know, how does the addition of HRT work with hypothyroidism?
So it's not going to treat the hypothyroidism, but if you're on thyroid replacement, it's not going to make it worse or change it to any great extent. Now, that being said, thyroid medication, thyroid replacement is really finicky. It's very fickle and tricky. And that's why your doctor is probably checking your thyroid level every 6 months or so. So the smallest little thing can change the way your thyroid replacement needs are. You can get a cold and that can change it. Any medication can kind of change it one way or another. But HRT does not specifically change thyroid replacement needs. So it's not going to, all of a sudden your synthroid's not going to stop working or your Armour thyroid. It's also not going to treat your hypothyroidism. So they're really two separate things. And so don't stop your thyroid replacement because you started HRT. That's not a safe thing to do either.
Okay. I think we have, what are our last two questions? T Sharp wants to know, do we have anything that helps with vaginal atrophy?
So our systemic HRT will definitely help with vaginal atrophy, but by far the most effective treatment is actually local estrogen cream applied to the vagina directly. And that's something universally that a lot of patients can use. Even patients that might be higher risk for taking systemic HRT can still take vaginal estrogen in a lot of cases. And so that by far will be the most effective treatment for that.
Angie wants to know, why is the treatment not covered by insurance? Dr. Green?
Yeah, I'll take that. Insurance is a pain in the neck. So let's start with that. So, and so that's part of it. It also would, for instance, when you have an office, you hire a full-time employee just to deal with the insurance. And so if we were to deal with insurance, then those of you that don't have insurance or are doing this outside of insurance, your costs would go way up. And so we made a decision that we're not going to deal with insurance companies directly. However, we do take HSA and FSA cards, so you can get it covered through insurance that way. And a lot of patients have success basically applying to their insurance themselves. So we have receipts that are specifically designed for insurance companies, and you can download them and you can put a claim in. And a lot of patients have had success getting reimbursed through their insurance. It's just a decision that we made. We want to keep costs down for people as much as possible to make this accessible to everybody, whether you have insurance or no insurance or good insurance or poor insurance. And this is one way of doing that. So it is possible to get it covered through your insurance, but you kind of have to do the footwork on that. But that's sort of the philosophy that we chose.
Okay. Another question related to thyroid. Do you see any major adjustments to thyroid levels when you're on HRT? This person has Hashimoto's hypothyroid.
Not typically. I think most of my patients that have thyroid disease and that are already on thyroid medication really don't notice a significant change or a change for the need of their thyroid dosage at all when they start HRT. Most women do just fine when they add HRT into the mix.
Hashimoto's, though, in particular, thyroid replacement needs tend to vary a lot over time, and it has nothing to do with the HRT. But if all of a sudden, 4 months after starting HRT, your thyroid replacement needs change, it probably has nothing to do with HRT. It probably would have changed anyway. That's sort of the nature of the beast, particularly with Hashimoto's.
Okay, our last question. It's a long one.
Drum roll.
Okay. Amy is 47. 2 years ago, she had her left ovary removed. She's had several Mirena IUDs. She thinks she's currently in perimenopause, hot flashes, brain fog, depression, anxiety, low to zero libido. Her gyno and primary care are reluctant to entertain it and are prescribing meds for ADHD and depression. She doesn't think that they're helping and thinks that her problems are hormone-based. Is she too young for HRT? And does the IUD prevent her from taking HRT? And is the loss of one ovary something to consider when taking HRT?
So, no, you're not too young to start HRT at 47. And the IUD doesn't prevent you from taking HRT at all. So the Mirena IUD typically works locally. It releases its medication into the lining of the uterus, and so it's not systemic. I have a lot of patients that have an IUD for contraception or for cycle control and that still use HRT and do fine. They can be used in combination. And typically when you lose one ovary, that doesn't change how we're going to dose it. Just like we're not going to base your dosage on lab values, we're not going to change your dosage based on whether you have one ovary or two ovaries. It's basically, we're addressing, your dosage is addressing your symptom profile. So, really that shouldn't change that at all. And sometimes when we take an ovary out, the other ovary that's remaining kind of kicks it into high gear and takes over the job of the other one too. In some cases for some women. So
I'll give you an interesting tidbit, a little Winona history about that. So when we first designed the onboarding questionnaire, we only asked if you had both your ovaries removed, because that does change things as far as dosing goes. And then people we got a feedback that people they wanted to tell us that they had one ovary out. It was important for them to tell us that. So we added that question basically because it made people feel better and it made them happy. But it's actually not information, whether you have two ovaries or one ovary, that's particularly useful for us as far as dosing. But it seemed to make people happier when we asked the question. So that's why we asked that, to be quite honest, just to give you a little behind the scenes look at how some of this was made. But if you think about the meaning of life in some way, it's to sort of reproduce yourself from a evolutionary point of view, right? And so we have redundancies in our reproductive system, and you really only need one ovary to have kids. One ovary is really enough to make all the hormones you need. So for most women, removing an ovary doesn't really change much as long as your other ovary is working. And it really doesn't affect so much the dosing for HRT. But again, the important thing is your symptoms. And that's Dr. Kat said.
Okay, I think that's all of our questions, everybody. I believe we made it through all of them. Thank you for staying. And as we mentioned, there's going to be a compounding session. It's going to be on Thursday, the last Thursday of January, the 25th, at the same time, 4:30 PST, same bat channel. So be sure and tune in. And I'm putting in the chat here, everybody, if you're in Southern California, we're going to do our first in-person meetup. So we're trying to help cultivate community. If you're interested, there's going to be some emails going out at Winona. So keep an eye there and on our social and in the women's group. If you want to come and be in community with other women and you want to listen to our Q&A with our pharmacist and Dr. Green, join us in person. You can still join us online, of course, if you aren't in Southern California. But for those of you who are local, you're going to want to stay tuned. And that's all I got. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see
Thanks
you.
for coming out tonight.
Yeah,
next
thank
month.
you guys.
Yeah, happy holidays, happy New Year.
Yeah, happy New Year, everybody.
Yes.
We made it through a whole year of Winona Q&As. Yay. Good job, everybody. Happy to spend time with you all. And thanks everyone for coming, who showed up here tonight. We had a really good turnout, so thank you to everybody who stayed for the whole thing.
Thanks for asking questions.
Yes. The questions help, because otherwise we're just here shooting the shit and talking
That's
about nothing.
Could be amusing, but it's not very educational.
Right.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone, and we will see you next month and next year.
Happy New Year. Great to see you both again, too.
Yeah. Happy New Year. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.